Okay, so we've got our Traxxas Revo here. This is the 1/10 scale, and it does have the Castle brushless system set up on it. An issue that we've been running into while running it is the push rods, which are connected to the suspension. The rod ends have been popping off, so we haven't been bending any of the push rods, but we have been popping the ends off, and when that happens, then you don't have any suspension travel and you have to stop, and then either pull that off or try to shove it back in. But once you do that, of course, you're now wearing out the parts, and they're not going to work as well. So the next time you cartwheel or whatever, you'll probably end up ripping that back out again. So let me take a closer look here for you. So you can see the push rod connects to the bottom of the arm and then up to the actual rocker piece right here. Now you can get different setups for these, so that will depict on what length you need for your push rod arm. And then, like I was saying, so when it pushes down, everything's good. Suspension is moving just how it should. You can see it up on the top there. However, sometimes after cartwheeling, you end up pulling the end out here. So when that happens, the truck basically sits all messed up and your suspension doesn't work. So obviously that's a problem. I've been trying to take a look at some of the other options available, and we settled on the Traxxas aluminum upgrade ones. They are red, so they kind of look cool too. So let's get into that and how they work. Yep, broken. So here are the Traxxas push rods. Now these are the upgraded versions. They're nice anodized red, and hopefully these put up with the abuse a little bit better. So let's get these open and take a look. Now, one other thing is, depending on the rockers that you have, and I'll have at the end here and in the description of which ones you're going to need depending on the rocker arms that you have on your Revo. You might also need to get these small little push rod spacers. They do come in red and blue. I got red just so they would match, but you might need those depending on which rocker arms that you have on your Revo. Okay, so I got these out of the package, and then I've got one of the stock factory pieces right here. Now, I did notice one, first of all, like I showed you in the first part, this thing is super stripped out, so that explains why I've been having so many problems. When I hit something or the suspension is not compressed, it rips apart and I lose that. Now, with the aftermarket Traxxas ones here, I was hoping that the rod ends would be a little bit beefier and perhaps stronger. It doesn't look like they're going to be. The two rod ends look basically identical, so I don't know for sure if this is going to solve my problem, but the Traxxas ones should be, or the aluminum upgrade ones should be, a little bit stronger. They are definitely lighter when you feel them next to each other in your hand, and they look really cool too. So hopefully this solves the problem. If not, obviously, then we'll have to work on a different solution. But otherwise, pretty simple setup the way all of this goes together. And then the other additional thing here is on the Traxxas piece, on the aftermarket one, you can actually remove the threading on there. And so I'm hoping that I'll be able to find either better or stronger, maybe even metal aftermarket rod ends that will work with this. But there is a little hex or Allen wrench piece on there, so you could unscrew that and put a different one in, or reverse the thread, or that kind of thing. So otherwise, it's really nice holding in your hand compared to the other piece here. Mentioned that the rod end gets pulled out, and I also mentioned that depending on the rockers that you have, like I have the Progressive 2 rockers, that I have to run the little spacers. So when I unscrewed the first one, I realized that when you put the spacer on there, it doesn't leave a ton of threads on there. Now that one's a little bit better, but the other one that I pulled off didn't have a lot of threads on there for the rod end to be connected to like that. And so I could see now why that it's kind of getting pulled out of there sometimes. So what I do suggest, and obviously try this out, and who knows, maybe this won't work, is remove the piece, the rod end screw that I told you about that is removable, and rather than completely remove it, maybe pull it out a couple more threads. So then that way, instead of, you know, sitting in there like that, you know, you might have another 3 or 4 threads on there that might actually help hold the rod end a lot better when you're, you know, hitting a big jump, or when the suspension is not compressed, you know, basically when you're in the air and the shock pushes the push rod down, it won't have as likelihood of ripping that rod end out. So give that a shot. Now, if you do remove these, first of all, it's not super difficult, but you do need a 2mm wrench to get that off of there, or Allen wrench. And because they are both have the 2mm on there, you can use 2mm on one end and then use another Allen on the other side, and then that way you're not finding yourself. Now, once you do get one side loosened, generally the other side is stuck. So just use some pliers, grab gently on here and, you know, squeeze. Don't go crazy with it, but hold enough and it shouldn't rotate or scrape. I tried using a piece of rubber before and it actually bit through the rubber and scraped. And then when I tried just using the pliers on there directly, it didn't scrape it or anything. It held it strong, and then I was able to get that loose. Now, after you do remove that, when you put it back on, use a little bit of thread lock just to make sure that that holds in there and doesn't try to back itself out. So I do want to go over one thing. If you do decide to unscrew this a little bit, the end piece here, I think I threw out like 3 to 4 threads or something like that. If you unscrew this, unscrew it like half a turn or 3/4 of a turn maybe. If you go too much, then the screw will have trouble staying in its spot when you're trying to tighten down the actual rod end, and then it ends up screwing it in anyway. So go ahead and just clamp down the pliers here and unscrew this like half a turn or 3/4 of a turn at most. Okay, so the Traxxas push rod arms are installed and they look badass. Now, I'm sure I abused my Revo just as much as you guys, so I'll definitely report back and let you know how they hold up. Okay, so these aluminum push rods that I've installed on the Revo are part number 5318X. The X on the end there does denominate the fact that these are the upgraded aluminum versions. They're super easy to identify because they are anodized red and they look super badass. I guess the only disappointing thing I found with these is that I was hoping to have maybe a beefier rod end on the actual push rod itself. But now that they're installed and everything, we'll see after I bash, you know, a little bit here and see how well they hold up. Obviously, if they don't hold up, we'll be switching on to, you know, different rod ends. Hopefully I don't bend it. The aluminum push rods are supposed to be very strong. But overall, looking forward to using these, and we'll report back.